Is somewhere probably within a couple hundred yards of here. I'd like for him to hear our noise as we talk about what this state needs to move forward. The last thing this state needs is more taxes. We got plenty of taxes. We got too many taxes. This state needs tax relief. Well, we're going to get started with the national anthem here in just a couple of minutes, but let's hit it one more time, loud enough that they can all hear us. It's our surplus, give it back. 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 All right. You know, when I was much younger than I am today, I think that's a line from a song or something. I was a lot younger then, and I used to sometimes go to events and people would chant, right? And one of the chants you would hear was, 2, 4, 6, 8, organized to smash the state. And what's funny about that is that we had no idea back then how big the state was going to get. I mean, holy mackerel, the state has done nothing but grow since those days long ago. Now, we don't want to smash the state, but we do want to reform the state. We do want to improve the state. We do want to make Minnesota a competitive state, a state that people want to move into instead of out of. And one of the fundamental things that we've got to do if we want to have a better state, if we want Minnesota to once again be one of the great states of the nation, one of the leaders in the nation, one of the states that the moving vans are coming in instead of going out. One of the fundamental things that we need is tax relief. And I know you know that, and that's why we are all here today. All right, we are going to officially begin our program now with the national anthem, which is going to be sung by Ann Walsh.
I would invite you to go ahead and join in singing with me today as we begin. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's glad gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets right there, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Great job, Ann. You know, I promised my wife years ago that I would never sing within 6 feet of a microphone. I greatly admire people like Ann who can sing. Unfortunately, I am not among their number. So we're going to get going now. We have the top radio personalities in the state of Minnesota here to talk to us today. And I want to start by just making a quick observation about reality, because sometimes people on the left in this state don't seem to be well acquainted with reality. The reality is that in the 21st century, Minnesota's economic growth has been below average. You all remember Garrison Keillor would talk about Minnesota as the state where everybody's above average. Well, that kind of used to be true, but it's not true anymore. You know, by the most fundamental measure of economic well-being, economic growth, Minnesota in the 21st century has been consistently below average. And the Twin Cities metropolitan area has been consistently below average in economic growth. Minnesota loses residents to other states on a net basis at every income level from $50,000 on up. You'll sometimes see an article in the Star Tribune or something like that along the lines of are rich people leaving Minnesota. Well, yeah, that's true, but it's the least of our problems. We are a net loser of citizens to other states at every income level from $50,000 on. The only income level where we are a net gainer of residents from other states is zero to $25,000. That's the only income level where we gain residents from other states on a net basis. This is not a sustainable strategy for this state or any other state. We need to revitalize our economy. We need to get back to creating good jobs. And the first fundamental step that we can take to make that happen is to get realistic tax rates. As long as we've got the 6th highest overall tax burden in the United States, as long as we've got the 6th highest top income tax rate in the United States, we've got our lowest income tax rate, which is higher than the highest tax bracket in 24 states, our lowest tax bracket. And so we've got to do something about these taxes. Our corporate income tax is the 3rd highest of any state. Who is going to want to come to Minnesota to start businesses and create jobs? So we've got the 3rd highest corporate income tax, and if you're lucky enough to actually make some money, you'll get taxed starting at 10%. That is not a great value proposition, and that's why we're all here today. This surplus is a golden opportunity. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't know, but it's a golden opportunity to finally get long overdue permanent tax cuts to put this state on at least closer to a competitive footing. All right, with that, I want to introduce our first speaker, who is my good friend, Scott Hennen. Scott is on Flag Family Radio out of Fargo and Points Northwest. So please welcome Scott Hennen.
Thank you, John. If you think John's got stuff there with the Achilles heel, you should see Walz after we get done with this deal, right? Yeah, there you go. Well, it's great to be here. I was thinking when I walked up today, I remember coming here as a student at Ramsey Elementary School in Montevideo, Minnesota, and thinking, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful Capitol. And, you know, my dad was a big fan of Hubert Humphrey. And that's when, you know, Democrats were reasonable. You know? And, you know, even Wendy Anderson, a few of these guys, Minnesota has a long string of liberal governors, but Tim Walz is tripling down on this, and it's a shame, and it really is. But I've had the blessing of being on the radio since I was 12 years old. My parents ran a radio station in Montevideo, Minnesota. Left there to go up to East Grand Forks and Grand Forks in the northwest corner, as John mentioned. And then after that, went up to Fargo. But the radio show I do has been heard in western Minnesota for a long time. So that's a long way from here, right? Good 4-hour drive, 5-hour drive, depending on what corner of northwest Minnesota you're at. So I know every one of you that are here today represent about 100 people who think like you do. So first thing I want to say is thank you. God bless you for being here. Honestly, I mean that because you're speaking for a whole lot of people, and there is a great awakening that's happening right now to say, what is happening to our country? What is happening to our state? I'm done with this. You know, give it back. So God bless you for being here. Fantastic. Let me see some of your signs, by the way. I like some of the signs. Taxation is theft. There's a collecting more taxes than is absolutely necessary is legalized robbery. Give it back. Exactly right. I see some signs up there that don't tread on me. The give it back signs. Any other homemade signs out there? There's a nice one. Hey, Walz, it's $9.38 billion. It's ours. What do you think of that sign? I love it. Yeah. That's really awesome. But you know what? It's a Saturday. There's a million things you could do. You could be cleaning up around the house. You could be running errands, and you're here to send a powerful message. And I honestly believe that. You know, Minnesota, sadly, I think of my time here, born in Pipestone, Minnesota in 1964. Do the math, 57. And Minnesota then versus Minnesota now. And what's happened to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the uber, blue parts of Minnesota, that has overwhelmed common sense, God-fearing, freedom-loving, Constitution-revering people. They're in every corner of Minnesota. How many people here are from, like, St. Cloud West? St. Cloud West. See, you are the true patriots because you're in the middle of the fight right here on the eastern edge. And you know what? Again, I'll say it, for every one of you, there's 100 out west. I really believe that this will awaken a whole new class of political activists to say, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We have a surplus. What is a surplus? Minnesota, this building, they never say no to anything when it comes to spending, right? So it's yes, yes, yes. Okay, add another program, add another building. Let's do it again. Have they ever said no to anything on spending here ever? Have they? Okay, so they already have enormous taxation, and they pretty much spend on what they want to spend on. And this is a surplus. It's like you sitting down with your budget. Maybe you won the lotto and you got a lot of money to spend. So I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to buy a lake home, I'm going to buy a couple trucks, everything else. And you get done and go, gosh, there's still money there. What do you know? So at that point, what do? My gosh, if you're Tim Walz, you say, why don't we send these peasants a crumb or two and call it a Walz check? Are you kidding me right now? A Walz check. And by the way, if you're married, we'll give you 1,000, some of you, and if you're not, we'll give you 500, and we'll decide who gets it and who doesn't. And even after we do that, it'll total like $2 billion of the $9.3 billion surplus. Are you kidding me? Yeah, what they think, this gentleman just said they think they're doing us a favor. I think it's worse than that. I think they think you're dumb.
That's it too.
I think they think we're so stupid that we can't do simple math to go, wait a minute, a surplus means you have way more than you need. And this is why I applaud John Hinderocker and the Senate American Experiment. Because for too long in Minnesota, this has happened, and there's nobody on that front watching and going, wait a minute. We're here because of the Center of the American Experiment saying, no. And you know what? They're not just saying, hey, why don't you give more of the surplus back to us? They're saying, wait a minute. Clearly you have a problem here because you're spending on everything you want to spend and you still have a surplus. So we need what? Permanent tax relief. This isn't about the $9.3 billion. This is about the reform. Also to John's point, Minnesota's not growing. When you tax and spend, Minnesota's not growing. Minnesota's not reaching its potential. I love this state. I spent a good chunk of my life in this state. There's a lot of great in this state, mostly because of the people of this state. Because of, again, that salt of the earth, bedrock folks who farm and do it to get up every day, work hard, put an honest day's living, and you're served by people here who think you're stupid.
I think so.
And really, this message is as much for Tim Walz, who's writing his little goodie speech right now. Oh, you're going to get this, and you're going to get that, and you're going to get this. And every once in a while, what do they say? A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. So he manages to come out to western Minnesota every now and then and say, oh, we're going to, we're for police, we're for law enforcement. Oh, yeah, I noticed, right?
Where were they?
Yeah, where were they when we were literally having businesses burned? And we're not even calling in the National Guard. Don't tell me you're for police. Don't tell me you're for giving part of this money back. It's all baloney. Anybody remember the term, pride cometh before the fall? Where does that come from? Bible, a good book, right?
Yeah.
Think of somebody sitting in an office going, yeah, let's send back a few crumbs and let's call it Walz checks.
Oh yeah.
Think of that arrogance. That you would actually go out and, last week I was at a grocery store. Oh, things are tough, that's why we're going to get people back, because if we give them a one-time check of $500, they'll be able to buy more bread. The by the way, the ridiculous policies of this country, of Tim Walz and his ilk, have raised the price of everything right now. You know, and so what he wants to do is tax more and then decide when you can get it back. Are you going to take that? No! Do you want it back? Yes! Do me a favor. When you leave here today, just remember how you felt about this event and how much in every fiber of your being you know that this needs to come back, and find 5 people. Find 10 people. Find people in your circle. Just have a reasonable conversation with them. I found in this day and age, it's hard to change somebody's mind because they've dug in, and social media is a cesspool of it's hard. But just have a reasonable conversation with them and say, okay, there's a surplus. Do you know why there's a surplus? They've taxed us too much. They've taxed us too much. That's why there's a surplus. So, what do you think they should do with that money? What should they do with that money? Everybody here gets it, give it back, but there's a lot of people that don't. So that's my point. Have that conversation, have that dialogue, you'll make a difference. And if you know anybody in Western Minnesota, trust me, they are 100% with you. The people I talk to every day, and they thank you for being here. Thanks to the Center for the American Experiment for being here, for being our voice, for getting this rally together, and God bless you all, one and all. Thanks for being here.
Scott, thank you very much. I hate to be chained to the back of a podium, but they tell me I'm supposed to use this microphone. It's the one that's hooked up to the press, and so that's why I'm standing back here, and we'll ask the other speakers to stand back here as well. So what are we going to do next? The next thing we're going to do, if you take out your smartphone, I assume pretty much all of you have a phone with you. Unfortunately, it's a sad thing, but it's a pretty safe assumption. Take out a smartphone and go to, on the internet, use your browser, go to www.giveitbackmn.com. www.giveitbackmn.com. And that is the special web page that we put up for the Give It Back campaign, which this rally, of course, is a part of. And on that page, you can very easily send an email, and if you put your zip code in, it will automatically go to the governor, but also to your representative and your senator based on a zip code. So what I'd like to do is to get hundreds and hundreds of emails sent right now to Governor Walz and to legislators telling them that we want the surplus back with the taxpayers where it came from. And everybody who sends an email right now, in the next few minutes, to Governor Walz and to legislators will be eligible for a $100 Amazon gift card. So even if you've already done it once before, go ahead and send another email, and one lucky winner is going to get a $100 Amazon gift card who sends that email now or in the next few minutes. Hey, where's the theme music? There we go. All right. That should be enough. That should be enough time to send off the email. Next, we are going to hear from Dan Ochsner, host of Ox in the Afternoon on KNSI in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Please welcome Dan Ochsner.
Can I come in this way? I'll be able to get over those wires there. Thank you. On behalf of all of us in the 6th Congressional District, you might see a dearth of folks from that area. It is Tom Emmer's endorsing convention right now going on in Delano. So sorry you're not going to get a great turnout from the 6th Congressional District, but I would like to thank the Center for having this event because I'm actually a CD6 delegate. Tom doesn't have any challengers, so you're saving me from a dreadful morning at a convention in Delano. So this is much better. Thank you. And since COVID, for the past couple of years, I've been sitting in a room talking to a radio audience that I can't see. So to come out here and see everybody, in the words of Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards, it's good to see everyone. It's good to be seen by everyone.
Smiling faces.
Exactly, you know, and with Keith, you never know when his last breath is going to be. But for us, it's just been so long since we've all gotten together. So it's great energy getting together, and thank you for making your way out here on this Saturday. I can't speak for Hennen for sure, but most talk radio hosts work for radio stations that might have other radio stations in the same building. There's a music station, there's a country station, there's a talk station, whatever. And we talk in the hallways, and so this week I was talking to my colleagues, you know, the cool DJs with their Zuba pants on or whatever they're wearing. And they're talking about their weekend. There's a car dealership going to have food trucks this weekend. They're going to have face painting for the kids, and there's going to be clowns, and it's going to be really, really fun. Oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And what are you doing, Ox? I'm going to go speak at a tax rally. And I thought, you know, they're looking at me with stone faces like, wow, gee, Ox, that sounds like a great weekend. You go have a good time. And I thought, this might be a teaching moment. But hopefully they'll be watching this, and I can share some stories from this event. And we'll revisit that here in just a minute. Taxes are not all bad. Fair? Taxes are necessary. They keep us safe. They pave the roads. They plow the roads, right? And what about from the Russians? What about from the Russians? I appreciate your sentiment. But they keep the big guys from beating up on the little guys, right? I mean, there's some roles for government and taxes. It's biblical, right? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But blatant exploitation of that concept is evil, because you have to understand, where does money come from in the first place? Whose money is it? It's God's money. We've earned it, it's God's. We get it, God gets it. The state should take only what they need. Caesar should take only what he needs. And I'm sorry, but they're taking way, way too much. We have proof of it now. We have these huge surpluses. And by the way, I hear every year, even some of the Republicans saying, all right, we made the deal, we're now fully funding education. All right, we made the deal, we're now fully funding this, we're fully funding this, we're fully funding transportation. And yet, we still have basically $10 billion in a surplus. Well, if we're fully funding everything, give it back. It's our money, give it back. What are you talking about? And you know, Art Laffer, right? The economist Art Laffer. I'll leave that kind of talk to Jason Lewis, who is going to be talking to you in a little while, much smarter than the Ox. But the Laffer curve, basically drawn on a bar napkin one night, as legend has it, whereas tax rates go up, right, increase revenue to the government. But it gets to a point where the tax rate is so high that people stop producing. And then the tax rates actually go down. So if you tax too much, guess what? You're going to get less money in the government, so nobody wins. Atlas will shrug eventually. People will stop producing. Are we getting to that point? We'll see. My first foray into talk radio, I was a news director at a small town in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Maybe you've heard of it. DL, yeah, exactly. And I actually became the president of the Minnesota Associated Press Broadcasters Board back in those days. And so all of a sudden, we're deep into a looming $20 billion biennium budget. It was going to be $20 billion, and our heads were exploding. You had Steve Swigum back then. Even Roger Moe, the Democrat leader, was like, oh, we can't go to $20 billion. But they did. I mean, $20 billion at that time, if you think about it, what is $20 billion? Back then, I mean, 25 years ago, it was like, how do you ask, what is that? Like if somebody said, oh, here's a train car full of radishes. How much does that weigh? I don't know. Can't imagine it, right? I have no idea what a train car of radishes weighs. I have no idea what $20 billion is. How are we ever going to, wow, this will be the last time we'll do this, so we got to finally pare down government, we got to shrink government, we got to lower taxes, we got to stop this. 25 years later, $50 billion. Never dreamed that it would happen. So we assumed that we would have to shrink government. We assumed that it was unsustainable back then. And why isn't it shrinking? Why have we been able to sustain this? Distractions. What are you guys distracted by? What's in the news? Anybody talking about taxes? Almost nobody. We are. Almost Ukraine, right? Ukraine, wars. Huge distractions. Anything else? Yep. Yeah, go. Critical race theory, right? CRT, absolutely. Climate change. Oh, climate change. You got to pay attention to climate change. Yep. Don't even get going on the COVID thing, mask mandates. Johnny Depp, right, and his ex-wife, really? That's what we're paying attention to.
Yeah, you lost the hangnail.
And of course, the gift that keeps on giving, when all of those things dry up, instead of talking about taxes, just talk about Donald Trump, and that'll take care of the news cycle for a week. And they're still doing it. They're still doing it.
Still claiming.
So after years of ravenous appetites for tax raising, now even some liberals are proposing tax cuts. Do you believe them? I will say that those people that are now saying that they support tax cuts will probably start saying, oh, I've also got photos of Bigfoot, and E.T. came to visit me, and by the way, Jackie Onassis came over for lasagna last night, and we've got pictures to prove it. We don't believe them, in the words of the immortal words of Captain Kirk regarding the Klingons. Don't believe them, don't trust them. They do not want to lower taxes. They do not want to get rid of taxes. They're saying it to get reelected. It's obvious. So, how do we get back focused on taxes? How do we make taxes interesting? How do we get taxes to be to beat out the distractions? I do a thing called Outside the Box with the Ox, which is a 90-second daily feature, heard, by the way, in some places on the East Coast, but primarily throughout Minnesota, based in St. Cloud, Winona, Fergus Falls, other markets. And I don't usually do this, but I'll give you a preview of what it's going to be on Monday. So you're going to be the first ones to hear the Outside the Box with the Ox for Monday. It will air on Mondays. There you go. So this is the preview. And I think it ties into this. So I'm going to read this, if that's okay, from the script. You may say, why don't we rally against inflation? Why don't we rally against critical race theory? Why don't we rally against welfare reform, crime? Understand this from outside the box. It's too high of taxes that give school districts the extra money to spend on CRT and sex ed for second graders. It's too high of taxes that gives the state extra money to spend on social and welfare programs designed to keep people dependent on government, never able to get ahead reliably voting for the very people that give them the handouts in the first place. It's too high of taxes that gives our government extra money for stimulus checks that pump too much money into the economy, causing inflation that makes us all pay way more extra for everything, gobbling up any benefit we were supposedly to get from the stimulus money in the first place. It is too high of taxes that enables government unions to demand more and more for their members so they can collect more dues and pay for campaigns for politicians who promise to raise taxes. And it's too high of taxes that eats away at the very soul of the proletariat, forcing entrepreneurs, achievers, and earners to breathe a collective sigh of defeat and staying home on election day because we don't believe our votes count anyway. We need to get the money back into our hands, out of the hands of the government. So to our elected leaders, what do we want? When do we want them? Thank you. God bless you for having us here today.
Thanks very much, Dan Ochsner. First of all, a quick announcement. We have several politicians here, several members of the legislature who are here because they are in fact committed to cutting your taxes, and we appreciate that. I think all of them have to leave for CD conventions here momentarily. So, and you know, we're often, people like us, people like you, people like me, are often critical of politicians as a group, and there's a reason for that. But never forget that there are some politicians, some elected officials who are on our side and who want to do the right thing, and we need more like them, not fewer like them. So we appreciate the politicians that have come here today to show their support for getting lower taxes, more realistic taxes here in Minnesota. Let's see, I think we have a little bit we're going to do now, right? I think, do we have some t-shirts to toss into the crowd? A lot of you have already gotten t-shirts on the way in, and we were going to get one of those t-shirt guns, but our liability insurance carrier didn't like the idea. Apparently they shoot them pretty hard. And plus it costs $1,000 to rent a t-shirt gun. Oh, come on, yeah, all right, yeah, oh. man, Bill Walsh, I think he could pitch for the Twins. Let's see, what else I got? You know what the surplus is like? Oh, the other side. Oh, come on, Peter. Oh, no. That guy can pitch for the Red Sox maybe, but definitely not the Twins. Or the Brewers. You know what the surplus is like? Yes, all right. And wear these t-shirts proudly. Wherever you go from now to the end of the legislative session and perhaps beyond, wear these t-shirts. Wear them to the grocery store. Wear them anytime you're out and about. And let people know you're on the side of those who want to revitalize the state of Minnesota. You know what the surplus is like? The surplus is like if you go into a store and you buy something that costs $10 and you give the clerk at the cash register a $20 bill. And she gives you the thing you just bought for $10, puts the $20 bill in the cash register, and then just sits there and looks at you. Yep. And she says, I don't know, I think maybe I'll spend that 10 on a 12-pack. And you say, wait a minute, that's not your $10 bill, that's my change. That's my $10 bill. That's exactly what we've got here. We overpaid, we paid too much, and the government says, oh, we got an extra $9.3 billion. What do you say we spend it? That's exactly what it's like. That's exactly what it's like. So it's important that we're making our voices heard here today. So let's see. Next we are going to hear from Jon Justice. Jon is on Justice and Drew, the morning drive time show on K-Talk. 11:30 a.m. here in the Twin Cities. So please welcome Jon Justice.
Thank you. I echo Ox. It's great to actually be out and about and see faces again. Actual faces. I don't see a mask in the bunch. Good for you guys. I'm driving down today from the great land of Blaine and going over what I want to talk about. And suddenly I don't want to say paranoid, but I got worried. I've been doing radio for 26 years. And screwing up the little things always concerns me, right? I don't want to mess up somebody's military title. I don't want to mess up an elected official's, are they a senator, are they a representative, is it state, is it national? So I'm driving down and I'm thinking, it's 9 billion, right? No, it's got to be 9 million. It can't be 9 billion, right? And I park, and I swear, I went to my email, and I went and looked, and I go, no, it's 9 billion. I don't care if it was 9 million. I don't care if it was 9,000. That's your money. That's my money. Right? I walked in and I'm taking in the building, looking around at all the architecture. And I'm thinking, there's a reason why buildings like this look like they do, and the government buildings that we go to now look like places that you would not want to hide when the zombie apocalypse takes place, right? They used to respect government, what the government was supposed to do, to work for us, right? They used to respect the money that goes into the government. They don't anymore. It's gone. I'm looking and I wish that our current government took as much care and cared as much about our tax dollars as they did when they built a place like this. It looks like this for a reason, because it's supposed to be special. It's supposed to set itself apart. It's supposed to stand for something better. And now it's been reduced to partisan politics. And what can we do with the dollars that come in? Heaven forbid we give it back to the people. It's incredible that we're waging a societal battle right now that over things that I was taught, that you were taught as a kid. The basics of life, right? How you properly treat the people around you. You treat others how you want to be treated, right? You judge people by the content of their character. Their character, nothing else. Just the content of not the color of their skin, not what political affiliation they belong to, not what their sexual orientation is. It's almost ridiculous to even have to consider expensing any sort of effort to push back on the forces that promote otherwise. And yet it's necessary. It's necessary to have days like today where a group of like-minded individuals can come and gather in one unifying voice and say enough is enough. You know, I'm tired of being taken advantage of for just following the rules, being taken advantage of over the people that abuse their power. We all watched as this pandemic played out, and we tried to go and follow the rules. And for a large part, most of us did go and follow the rules, as the government went and made up a bunch of arbitrary rules, not based off of science. At first, it was supposed to be about science, right? But then it all changed. Once we actually figured out what was happening, the government decided, oh, you know what? We can actually take advantage of this. And advantage they took. A lot of you guys lost your jobs. A lot of you lost your businesses. And then in the midst of all of this, what happened? We watched two of our world-class cities burn because those in charge allowed it to happen for days on end. They remained silent because they thought it was politically expedient to do so. We all have to go and follow the rules. We go and follow the law, and yet individuals were out there allowed to break the law and break the rules. And at the end of the day, who gets disrespected? We do. We get disrespected in this. You continue to pay your taxes and do the right thing. To do better than the lawbreakers. To do better than those in elected positions of power who tell you that they're on your side and then make decisions that are completely otherwise. Which brings us to why we're here today. I was taught that when you took something from somebody else and didn't give it back, that was stealing. If I overpay a medical bill, of which I have to pay a lot of, unfortunately, if I overpay a medical bill, and this has happened, I get a refund, and then I get a letter from the health provider saying, hey, here's your money back, you paid too much. Please continue to accept our care. Cool. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it, right? I'm sick and tired of being taken advantage of, and it's flat out wrong for the government to assume that just because they took more of my money, of our money, of your money, that they get to decide what to do with it. It's abuse when the government, with the extra money it took, tries to appease us, because they actually admit it, right? They try to appease us by saying, oh, we'll give you some of it back. Well, if you're admitting you're going to get some of it back, then you're admitting at least I am supposed to have some of that back, right? No, the right thing to do is to give it all back. And there's a question that needs to be asked in all of this, right? And I appreciate all the speakers and you guys arriving here, but it's something that I wish the media would do every single time they get in front of Governor Tim Walz or any elected official and they talk about this $9.3 billion surplus. There's one question I wish they would ask. And this isn't even like a matter of being partisan in this. It's just an honest question. Why do you think that you should be able to keep any cent of that money? What makes you think that you're entitled to it? To Governor Tim Walz, what is it inside your head that gives you the right to keep any of the money that you shouldn't have taken from us? I want to know, I legitimately want to know the answer to that question. I legitimately want to know why they think that that is okay. Because it gets to the heart of the whole issue and the problem. Because they're not going to have an answer to that question. They're not going to be able to explain to you. They'll do some runaround and the media will move on to something else. But that's what I want to know, because the problem is the mentality. The problem is the mentality that makes men and women, elected officials, think that it's okay to keep any amount of the surplus they've given to us. So today, let's ask that question. You took $9.3 billion more from us than you should have. Why do you think that it's okay to keep any portion of that money? Because again, my mother and father taught me, and I teach my children, right, that if you take something that is someone else and you don't give it back, you're stealing. Flat out. And listen, as I wrap up, I would encourage you, as you talk to your elected officials, that you ask them the same question, right? Get to the heart of the whole reason why they think it's okay to keep any single cent of this. Ask everybody, get them on record. Because only when we get to the heart of the problem are we going to be able to change things and fix things. It starts at events like this today, and it heads off at the ballot box, and us continuing to let our voices be heard. That $9.3 billion you took isn't yours to decide what to do with. It's ours. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out today and listening to the show. I really do appreciate it.
Jon Justice, thank you very much. So, what year is this? It's 2021. What does that mean? This event would not be complete without a selfie. And so we're now going to just pause very briefly. Catherine, do you want to explain what people should do for a selfie?
Yeah, I want to take one picture that all of you guys can send to your elected officials, the people who are supposed to be representing you. We want to show them exactly how many people came out here today and want their money back. So if everyone can come into the center, flood this middle area here, and we'll take a picture that you all can have and send to everyone who represents you. So come in the middle.
Yeah, we got a lot of people around the sides, which is
and
great.
And stand up if you're in chairs, stand up. Yeah, hold up your signs if you have them.
No, this is good. This is good.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I want to just bring your attention, as you're making your way back there to where you're standing, I want to just bring your attention to something that not everybody knows about. First of all, let me ask this question. Excuse me. What has happened to the price of gasoline during the Joe Biden administration? It's doubled. Yeah, that's right. And do you think it's a good idea to add another 50 cents a gallon to the price of gasoline? Is that a good idea? No, that's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea, but Tim Walz and a number of liberals in the legislature are trying to do exactly that. They want to impose California carbon standards on all gasoline sold in the state of Minnesota. That's going to add 50 cents a gallon to the cost of gasoline on top of the doubling of the cost of gasoline that we've already seen. And they're trying to do this quietly because they understand that if people know what's going on, if people, wait a minute, you're trying to raise the price of gasoline higher, they will get slaughtered in November. But watch for this. We call it gas station inflation. Go to AmericanExperiment.org. You can very quickly find it. It's one of our initiatives, gas station inflation. Let your representative and your senator know we don't need even more expensive gasoline. All right, we're coming now to the main event of today's program. one of the things that we started thinking about, what can we do as part of our Give It Back campaign, get the surplus back where it came from in the hands of the taxpayers. We said we got to have a rally at the Capitol, because there was a time back in the late 1990s and the early years of the 21st century when there were big tax rallies at the Capitol year after year, and many people would turn out and say our taxes are too high, we need tax cuts. And we said to ourselves, well, who used to drive those rallies? Who used to head up those rallies? Answer was Jason Lewis. Jason Lewis did that years ago. And so I'm proud to say Jason is a good friend of mine, and I reached out to Jason and I said, hey, guess what? We're going to have a tax rally. How would you like to be our keynote speaker? Jason thought about it for roughly a second and a half, and he said, count me in. And so we're going to play a little music that might be familiar to you from Jason's days on the radio.
I know that song from someplace. I'm not. Jon, wow, thank you so much. You know, Jon likes to embellish things a little bit. You know, the way it really went down was he called me the other day and he said, Jason, you like this surplus thing going? I said, no. You want your money back? I said, yes. Do you believe in property rights? I said, sure. And finally, Jon said, well, do you believe in free speech? And I said, of course. And he said, how about giving one? So here I am. But, as Hunter Biden once said, to his favorite hire, I won't keep you long. I'm telling you, we are living in some strange times, are we not? The inmates are running the asylum. And you take a look at the people running Washington, and you take a look at the people in charge, the spenders anyway, in St. Paul, and it is the greatest collection of misfits since the bar scene in the original Star Wars. These people don't have a clue, and when you combine unethical attitudes with stupidity, you know, it's sort of like Twitter. When you combine stupidity with anonymity, you get a cesspool. So go Elon, right? But we have an existential crisis, and I hate that word because everybody uses it, but we truly do have an existential crisis, and it's the leadership that we've elected. Now, there were a few political candidates in the last few cycles that warned you what would happen if the Democrats took the House in 2018 in Washington, if my former colleague in the House of Representatives, Mr. Walz, got in the governor's mansion, if in fact Tina Smith went back to the U.S. Senate, you know, which kind of reminds me. You know, everybody these days wants to identify as something. You know, I identify this, my personal pronouns are this and this and this. So today I think I'm going to identify as Tina Smith, which means I'm your U.S. Senator. Come to think of it, had we been a little more disciplined in who voted and where and when, I may be your U.S. Senator. Everybody's talking about a red wave, and I do think we'll take the House in Washington. I think we're going to have a big change in St. Paul, and I think that's all to the good. But as I've been telling my colleagues, former and otherwise, it's not good enough to sit back and just ride a wave. You have to lead the way. You have to be out front talking about things. With the Republican Party or as a conservative movement or as independents, this is a nonpartisan event, so I don't care where you belong or where you sit. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that these monopolistic common carriers known as big tech ought to be censoring everybody in this room. Zip, zero, nada. So when I say we ought to be leading, we ought to be saying we ought to repeal Section 230 and make big tech live under the laws that every other company has to live under. And when some Twitter troll or some left-wing kook on Facebook or any other app defames you, not only should they be sued, but Facebook and Twitter and Google should be sued as well. They've had one of the single greatest carve-outs, benefits from government, going back to the CDA Act of 1996, the world has ever seen. And for that carve-out, where they could not be held liable legally for the lies they spew, they promised to be neutral. They promised to be a neutral platform and make certain that if you want your surplus back, why, your post on Twitter would show up at the top of the feed. Now, who on earth thinks that those guys are neutral? They're not neutral, and it is time that we lead on issues like that. It's time that we lead here in Minnesota on making certain that the one-time experiment in COVID rules for voting, which allowed 47% of the vote to be mail-in, 700,000 absentee ballots which were not matched up to the statewide voter registration system by the date they certified the election, to make certain that Steve Simon never rewrites the election code again and we go back to voting the way we ought to. And make certain that going forward in the near future, Minnesota has voter ID for self-government and the tax. Those are the things we need to be leading on in St. Paul and in Washington. We need to be making certain that before we start protecting the borders of every country around the globe, we protect our own first. And of course, we need to make certain that property, the rights to property, being the first object of government, as the founders told us, we need to make certain that that which is ours is returned to ours, and $9.3 billion doesn't go back in Walz checks one time disproportionately, but we cut tax rates permanently so they never overcollect us again. These people in St. Paul deal in tax and spending the way Hunter deals in cocaine. They can't get enough. I am telling you, if you look at our budget, it wasn't that long ago, about 2010, a little over a decade ago, when the general fund in Minnesota was $29 billion, under $30 billion. That's still a lot of money. You know what it is today? In a decade? $52 billion. They collected even more than that. It's gone up 75% in a decade. Now, how many people's income has gone up 75% in a decade? Your grocery bill has. Literally everything. You know, the reason I focused on big tech a little bit is that everything we told you that would happen has happened. The border's gone out of control, inflation has spiked, taxes are going up, everything literally. And had we had a fair free speech, had we had the ability to communicate with our neighbors on these monopolistic platforms, which are common carriers, if you think Google and Facebook and Amazon and all the big tech are allowed to discriminate based on viewpoint, then why can't XL say, well, you're a conservative, I think I'll cut off your gas tonight? They're not allowed to do that, and these companies shouldn't be allowed to do that, but the byproduct is that people don't know the truth. People don't know that 2 million people under Joe Biden have crossed the border illegally. People don't know that they're actually undercounting inflation. They're using the substitute method. They say, well, the price of your refrigerator's gone up 15%, but you could buy another one that's just as good and it only went up 8%. So we're going to say the inflation rate's 8%. They do that. They don't count it month over month and annualize it. So if the month of March inflation went up 2%, you multiply that times 12 plus compound interest, and you're looking at 20% inflation. They just take the month of March and say, we'll use that for the whole year. They're undercounting inflation, but people don't know that. It's actually worse than what they're telling you. You look at everything we said would happen with a public education system that is so fundamentally dysfunctional that they exist for the benefit of their employees and not the benefit of their customers, students, and parents. There should not be one student, one parent, one community that if they don't want their money back to choose the school of their choice, shouldn't be able to get it. And instead, you're trapped in a monopoly. You're trapped in a monopoly where teachers decide to get paid working from home. You're trapped in a monopoly where they decide to teach critical race theory or make certain that Johnny and Susie can be the gender they want instead of the gender they are. This is what happens. This is what happens when you stifle free speech. This is what happens when the swamp takes control. This is what happens when, in fact, these socialists, these Looney Tunes, start governing us the way they want. Now, let me be clear about this. It is a red wave because of the carnage Joe Biden has ensued upon us. He's like Jimmy Carter with a mean streak, right? I mean, this is where we are. But does anybody in this room, does anybody up there think that when push comes to shove, if Keith Ellison needs a few extra votes come this November, he isn't going to find them someplace? So we need to start talking about big tech. We need to start talking about the real inflation numbers, about CRT, and we need to start talking and keep talking about voter integrity and making certain self-government works. Because if we don't, we're going to get budgets that go up 75%, and there's going to be no one there to stop them. No one. And by the way, that $52 billion general fund budget, that's just the Minnesota budget. Every state has two budgets, their own general fund that you pay for, but then the total budget when you include all of the federal funds and the federal grants that come in. Take that $52 billion and double it. That is Minnesota's total budget. It's gone up double digits the last 3 or 4 budget biennia. Oh, and education is the largest item on the general fund budget, but when you take federal funds and put it in, guess what the largest item is? Health and Human Services, which is code for public assistance. You wonder why everywhere I travel in Minnesota, I see help wanted signs and people can't find work? That's the reason. $100 billion state budget with the largest item being, don't worry, we'll extend unemployment benefits, we won't have work requirements for SNAP, we won't do any of it. And just to add one more thing before I close, and I know you thought that would never happen. When I was in Congress, we did something called the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And the Tax Cut and Jobs Act lowered every bracket the way we promised it would. But it also made certain that we lowered taxes on small businesses, which are still the economic engine in Minnesota and across the country. So we passed something called a 20% pass-through deduction. So if you're a sole proprietor, LLC, subchapter, you're not a C Corp, you might be an S Corp, and all of your business income flows to your personal return. That's business income, it's not your personal money. We gave you a 20% deduction of the first 20% of income off that ballot. Now, that's great. We saw an economic renaissance that the left said we never see. We had unemployment at 3%. Everybody got a pay hike. We were booming. But you know what Minnesota did? You know what this governor did? You know what the state legislature did? They took that 20% and they said, oh, that's great, but we're not going to conform to that at the state level. We're going to make you add that back for Minnesota taxes and pay into it. The fact is, had they followed through on conforming to the federal code, the one that we passed when I was in Congress, your taxes would be a lot lower. Instead, they said, no, we like our high tax state. And to add insult to injury, they made certain they gave a break to the wealthiest of folks. Remember, the state and local income tax deduction, that just was a huge benefit to California, Massachusetts, New York, and yes, Minnesota, because the wealthy could deduct their state and local taxes. So we said, well, you know what? We don't want to give a tax break to the wealthy. We're going to limit that to $10,000 because most people don't pay more than $10,000 in income or in state and local taxes. In fact, the vast majority don't. This group behind us went in and said, let's let them put that state and local tax deduction on their business return so they have an unlimited deduction. So California and Massachusetts and New York and Minnesota got a break for their own taxes for their being a high tax state while you got your small business income deduction taken away. That's what's going on in this Capitol. That's why it's so important for you to be here, and that's why I'm glad to be a part of it. Look, nobody likes to say, I told you so, but I told you so. And this now is another reset, one other great event in America that we have the ability to get a redo if things go to hell in a handbasket, which they clearly are. And that's what Thomas Paine was talking about during the Revolution. You know, people don't realize how close to losing the Revolution we really were. And Paine was embedded with Washington in 1776 when he was driven from Boston after he took it, driven from Long Island, driven from New York, across the Delaware. And on that Christmas, you know, Paine said, these are the times that try men's souls. And he also said something else. Right before Washington crossed the Delaware on that Christmas night and surprised the British and the Hessians at Trenton, and we are on our way to our revolution. We almost lost it before it got started. Paine said, these are the times that try men's souls, and he also said, we have it within our power to begin the world anew again. And so do we. We always do, as long as we're Americans, as long as we're Minnesotans. It is up to all of us, with our backs against the wall right now, to grab that power and begin Minnesota anew again. Thank you all very much.
Today. So to wrap things up for the Give It Back rally, I want to hear some real noise. I want to hear some loud noise. I want to hear some noise they can hear all around this building and across the street and into the office buildings. I want to hear some loud, loud noise. So let's wrap it up. It's our surplus. Give it back. It's our surplus. Give it back. It's our surplus. Give it back. It's our surplus, give it back! It's our surplus, give it back! And now let's go back to our homes and our neighborhoods and our towns and our communities, and let's carry that message, and let's keep carrying that message through the rest of the legislative session. Thank you all so much for coming.